what's cool is that I think the modal age group here is really in that pocket where we want to see change. People want to see change. And so it's interesting to be part of a project that professes that
Yep.
idea and knows it has to deliver on it internally. We take that very seriously. This is not bullshit, you know. It's easy to treat things as bullshit, but it's not. I mean, and we don't know. I mean, sure, can we make the world a perfect place? No. Can we
No.
make it a better place? Well, we have to. I mean, we all have to.
Yeah.
So that kind of philosophy becomes part of all this, which can run right up against, like you were saying, there's situations where it's like, are you working for the long term or the short term? And
Hmm.
it's there's a lot of scrutiny here, and there's a lot of things for people to ask and question and challenge, which we welcome because I think that people are speaking, doubts that are real, or concerns that are real, or skepticism that is real. But you know, cynicism, I think we all have it. But you can't have cynicism without idealism.
Yeah.
And so we focus on that part to counter the other side of the coin, right?
Frogland presents All Chill, No Shill, a podcast born out of the desire to hear more than elevator pitches. My name's Hazer, and I got a hell of a conversation for you today.
What you been up to?
Well, I've been working on Frogland stuff a lot. It's taken up a lot of it's, the end. I was thinking about this phrase the other day. It's like I think I spend a little too much time with my mind sometimes, but you have to. And so there's been a lot of writing lately, like the Medium article stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that Lollyhops and I have been working on. And I mean, she's blazing the trail. And then, my writing, and editing time goes into that. And the article we just finished was actually quite complicated to write. It'll come up in the town hall, I think.
Are
Just
you
because
talking about the Medium article that just dropped, or one that you guys are just working on now?
the one that just dropped. It's very. I mean, it's one of those pieces of writing where it's informative, but it's really more a reveal piece than it is an information piece. The first article we did in this series, that just began a couple weeks ago, was more about transferring information about land sales and structure and so on. This is more like kind of helping everybody kind of see who we are from almost a manifesto standpoint, frankly. I mean, just in terms of our philosophy and being clear about it. But it is philosophy. So there's a certain lack of clarity, and there's a certain kind of, airy
Amount that
fairy
somebody
kind
can
of
read in.
quality.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, but it is meant to inspire, or at least reveal the depth of inspiration that we have internally, because communicating the processes and the mood, of what happens internally is very important when you have people who are committed to following, what you're doing and what you're creating, and they have invested. The way I think about it is that, of course, there are concrete investments that people have made, in terms of finance and so on, but people are investing their time and also their belief systems,
Yeah.
um, and or just like, I want to back these people. I want them to succeed, but I also want to watch them succeed, right? So there's a certain kind of entertainment value to what we're doing. And
Puppet
um
master.
it will, that's an interesting phrase, because one of the most difficult challenges here, and I don't mean problem, I mean difficult, is this. I mean, and that article hinges on this whole concept of co-creation and explaining that in a little bit more of an abstract sense. And the involvement of others in a sincere way, not in a bullshit blow off way, is I mean, we all love the challenge of it. Um, my my because I come from the arts, and even though it's the entertainment arts, which isn't individual, it's necessarily collaborative. It's still black box, and this is not
Hmm.
black box. And so it creates a whole different set of conditions where people get involved, and you want people to get involved, and you want to listen to ideas, and you want to take them in. You have to. Um, uh, and then the big fear from the black box era was always like, well, you don't want to. I mean, why would you involve the audience in designing the show, right? Because that's like it's like designed by committee.
Yep.
But first of all, that was true. It doesn't always need to be true. Second of all, we don't want it to be true in this case. And third, I think a lot of people want to see evidence that this new kind of entertainment approach can work in that way. And it's not just high-minded gunk, you know. It's not like, well, we'll renew the show or not based on how many tweets or retweets, but actually getting people's, ideas into this in a way that's both fair and rewarding, right? Because it's very easy to just say that, and it's
Yeah.
very easy.
And I wonder
Go
too.
ahead.
So I wonder if, because that's the thing, it is just about anybody can get into it, but there's also the choice of participation, because there's going to be a ton of people that don't want any creative input or that side of it, and what you almost get is the people that self-select as creative or want to express that side of it and want to contribute something. And I feel like when you look at the people that contribute the most, they end up, kind of starting at sort of a base level and then sort of building up kind of quickly as soon as they feel comfortable in it. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And so I think one of the biggest challenges is to keep that flywheel effect going,
Hmm.
so that um because the part of the dealio here is that when we choose to do this, um we also have to be very aware of the fact that we are also a training ground, right? So it's but unlike like an established show where it's like, here's the show bible, this is everything you need to understand in order to write for this show. Well, we do have that in the form of the Toadex, and we have it in the form
Hmm.
of the ongoing conversation in Discord. However, it's not fixed, and so things are going to slide around, new ideas are going to come in, and we're exploring all kinds of technology and display, methodologies of display and quality of art impact, um, because there's three pillars here, and that social interaction part, plus having like a quirky world, and tokenomics, right? An actual like system of transaction, and coupling, creative emotion and creative participation with transaction. um I think a lot of people are wanting to see this work, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, you're right. There are definitely some people who just are willing to just watch it, and that's fine. I mean, there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. And so uh which is another meta process here, which is that we not only have to create entertainment, we have to be,
Entertaining.
yeah, compelling.
Hmm. While you do
Entertaining
it.
is really a true word, right? But compelling is the important thing. And I mean, what I like about what you're doing here is that you're going to explore all of us individually, which is, it's about time.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
the differences are going to be really interesting, and the similarities are going to be obvious. So it's really cool. I mean, I mean, not, I mean, ultra meta, right? You're a very good example of this process that we're talking about. You don't have to be doing this.
No, but it's fun. And honestly, I'm like, I have examples of projects like this that I've done over the years or wanted to start over the years. And it always ends up like kind of either petering out because I'm in Montana, and then up until, COVID, remote stuff wasn't a thing. So you kind of had to do it in person. Every week you've got to travel 45 minutes to either go on a podcast or try to get somebody to, record with you. Once I hit the week or two deal of like trying to get something rolling and then like not linking up, I'm just like, all right, I got to go focus on other stuff. Because there's even after this long, there's still a couple of people on the team that I don't know super well. I've pretty much interacted with just about everybody, but Like clearly the creative side has been more so, and with Lolly in the community side. But yeah, I'm excited. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a great service to the community because I think that uh yeah, because I the team matters, and I say this, with a lot of humility, but we know that we matter, and sometimes it's hard to face up to just how true that is. It's scary, right? Because you can be very appreciated, but you can also be, I don't know, people are going to react how they're going to react,
Yeah.
and so it is a little bit like putting yourself out there. I mean, the thing I always identify with is like, I think one of the most important things that anybody should go through in life, is having to give either a performance or a talk in front of an audience, and like nobody shows up, and you're literally performing to an empty theater. Anybody who's worked in entertainment knows what that's like. Or if you're like an artist and there's a show and it's like, there could be 100, it's room for 100, it says,
Yep.
fire
Max
fire department,
capacity. Yep.
there's like 10 and it could fill 3. That's like those, when you go through that, it helps you understand just how much dedication it takes. You begin to respect a lot of people who quote made it, in any way, because it takes a lot of willingness to put yourself out there.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, there was a animation supervisor friend of mine I worked with, and he said the key is you got to dare to be stupid. you know
Hmm. Beginner
um
mindset.
yeah, beginner's mind, there you go.
Hmm.
Zen, there, that's it right there. Like to be unknowledgeable about what exactly you're heading into, but to be open and to the back and forth. And the back and forth in this world is interesting because some of it's focused, but a lot of it is very rapid paced. And also you've got it's actually a linguistic problem. It's not just because there are people from all over the world. That is part of it.
Hmm.
And you're trying to develop like I mean, you have to develop more and more of a visual language, which is part of
Yep.
what we've been going through, this exercise of branding, of firming up the brand, and the graphical representation of Frogland and Notorious frogs, right? And to become like a little bit more coherent. And through that process, it means that there's naturally some exploration. I mean, people always say nobody wants to see how the sausage is being made. I mean, it's a very effective phrase. It's not the prettiest thing, but I think here that's what it has to be.
So yeah, I think that I always bounce back and forth. Earlier in my career, uh, I was all about showing everything, probably too much so. So I was probably like overexposed as far as like daily life goes. But stepping back, yeah, I mean, I think that because even with the sculpture side, I'm like, do I show all of the times that I'm failing? Because like 90% of the days, it's just failed experiments. And then it finally comes together, and I'm like, okay, I got a couple steps closer. And I think that there is definitely the people out there, it's just going to take time to get through to them.
Yeah. Well, I like, what you tweeted this. I saw it earlier. It's like we're in the second phase, and
Hmm.
it was a call to action that you did. It's like, maybe you should look at what already exists. You're like, why are there more NFT projects coming out? There's this weird thing, nobody knows right, this is so new, nobody knows the trajectory of it. Like, maybe there won't be a lot of new ones. Maybe all the ones that exist are the only ones, and now you got to back one, right?
Hmm.
Or there's plenty of choice, and there will be new and great ones, because there always will be.
Yeah.
That's how innovation works. But there is this, I love how you put it, right? There's this second, what did you say? It's like this second phase
Hmm.
of development here.
Yeah, because you
Which,
get into it, there's a ton of excitement, everything's new. Honestly, you want to talk about like digital scarcity, the numbers
mhm.
that are available, the projects that are available, and they're going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to get into because like just basically till they're not raising enough funds to be able to produce anything. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be cool to start seeing the projects that like have funding start to get their legs, start to like figure out what they're really doing.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the things that's very interesting about this space and this experience for me. Having been through a few cycles of stuff, is that there's 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 always pent up at all these, at the inflection points in technology and communication and media and society, right? I mean, there are these opportunities to unfold the past. Um, and the last several years, the last couple of decades almost, there's been this buildup of concern, um, and generationally, it's easy to see that we're working with the modal audience. The audiences should be worldwide eventually, right?
Hmm.
But right now the average, it's kind of like somebody who's like between 35 45. These are critical years, man. 35 to
Yeah.
45 is, those are hairpin turn years for people, and people are like, I think the way humans are constructed, this is like, one of the ways I think is like, there's a reason why Jesus dies at 33. Just from a mythological standpoint, it's like you can put up with almost anything up until you're like in your mid 30s. And then some choices have to be made because you want things to be better or
Hmm.
different or something.
Yeah.
And just repeating the day to day becomes very, very difficult. And what's cool is that I think the modal age group here is really in that pocket where we want to see change. People want to see change. And so it's interesting to be part of a project that professes that idea and knows it has to deliver on it internally. We take that very seriously. This is not bullshit, it's easy to treat things as bullshit, but it's not. I mean, and we don't know. I mean, sure, can we make the world a perfect place? No. Can we
No.
make it a better place? Well, we have to. I mean, we all have to.
Yeah.
So that kind of philosophy becomes part of all this, which can run right up against, like you were saying, there's situations where it's like, are you working for the long term or the short term? And
Hmm.
it's there's a lot of scrutiny here, and there's a lot of things for people to ask and question and challenge, which we welcome because I think that people are speaking doubts that are real, or concerns that are real, or skepticism that is real. But you know cynicism, I think we all have it, but you can't have cynicism without idealism.
Yeah.
And so we focus on that part to counter the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah. Is there anything that feels familiar, as foreign as Web3 is in so many ways? Because I'm assuming,
You mean historical trends and
yeah,
technology?
technological trends. Because like I remember, I got into photography right at the turn of digital. So
Right.
even shooting for like high school, I was on a digital camera.
Hmm.
And there was definitely a point in college where I would meet people that were still in the film program
Hmm.
and they're still teaching them on film for 2 years. At a certain point, there was a black box around every trade because you couldn't go just learn how to be a photographer. One, materials like equipment, chemicals, all super expensive. And two, like the knowledge wasn't there. You had to go work underneath somebody to learn it. That's probably been the biggest change that I could feel from still being able to see people that had to do it the old way, but being almost fully like self-taught through the internet, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, I've actually, I've been around long enough to see this. I've seen it a few times change. Yeah, and I've gone from the ASA 400 and deck doll on my fingers, in the tray with the red light, era into the digital photography era, cinematography, going from cameras to to digital sensors. And there's no question that the lowering of the threshold for access to at least the fundamental process, that's a good thing. It's a good thing because when you think about the history of creativity and imagination, and I apply this to engineering too, this doesn't just apply to art. There have historically been a lot of lost Picassos. I mean, there are a lot of people who've lived who have had more talent than you or I will ever know. But because of the biggest, life, I get into these arguments sometimes with people who like typically they're very like into how much they were the cause of their success. And
Mm,
yeah, they worked hard. Um, but it's very hard for me to get away from this fundamental fact of life, which is that these two factors of luck that you cannot control: when you're born, where you're born, slash who you're born to, that's gonna that's gonna pretty much set it. You
hmm.
know, 90% of the dice roll is right there. And so for people in an era where they can get their hands on things and start using them sooner, that's good because it makes it more possible for more people to express things that are important. Um, so that's great. Now the counter trend to that, of course, is that you have to go through this constant cycle of change and adaptation, which creates two big problems. The two big problems are that the talent that's been cultivated from past techniques, like the ateliers and the apprenticeships that you're referring to, right?
Hmm.
Um, so much knowledge there, and it can be lost, right? Because people just start hacking at it and starting. It's like, oh, great. So the first video cameras come out. Guess what? It doesn't look any better. The stuff they made in 1910 looks better, right?
Yeah.
So we have to go through that cycle again of learning, and also the initial technology is always crappy at first, right?
Hmm.
And so film went through that whole thing where it was just like, yeah, emulsion, nothing looks better than emulsion. Nothing looks better than emulsion. Nothing's ever going to look better than emulsion. Holy shit, this looks better than emulsion, right? It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time and what the threshold, the cost threshold, and the access
Hmm.
thresholds are, right? Now, in this specific instance, right, where we are melding all these technologies, right? The Web 2, we keep talking about Web 3. I hate these terms, but they're meaningful, right? And so one of the things that's repeating itself goes back to, Web 1, like the late 90s. And I think a lot of people recognize this. There's an era of enormous innovation. Unexpected. There you go.
By that, they're referring to pre iPhone wireless.
There you go. Wireless mobile advertising for everybody who's got like a clamshell phone and
It
a
was.
Palm Pilot, right? And
Yep.
so, or a BlackBerry, and it's like, boom, you're gone. So it's like, yeah. So those kind of revolutions happen, but there's innovation in everything. And so the '90s was all of this, right? Um, with the quote first internet era, at least the public internet era, right, or the public awareness and utility era. It was open, it was messy as hell, it was a lot of fun, there was a lot of good things that came up from it, and of course it became a bubble. And there was like, yeah, but what you're worth $1 billion, but for doing what, right? So, and then there was this belief system, right? There can be many, 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 many. Well, guess what? Now we've got one Amazon, one Apple, one Google, one Facebook. And so it's that it was. I think a lot of people were really surprised by that. That, wait a minute, this is just as centralized as Chase Manhattan Bank.
Hmm. Well,
And
and then you start to see. I mean, that to me that always correlates closer to like equilibrium. So pendulum swings one way, swings the other way. Even with
yeah,
like Netflix, because it's a competitive advantage to be the only one. Like, sure, they're forging new technology, new path. They had to build a whole ton, but like, it's well known in the business world. You don't like first mover advantage or whatever. Being first to market is not usually the company that ends up winning because it costs a lot. It's usually like a couple down the line that the base layer's done and they end up being able to take it further.
Yes. And so when you look at it in the broad historical context, that is pretty much describes every revolution or evolution of business and technology. Um, so the and I think the humbling thing about an academic understanding of history is that the best predictor of the past is our best predictor of the future is the past. I mean, that's actually science too, right? So things tend to trend. Do we is what we're doing now, quote, Web3, NFTs, whatever we call it, are we going to be free of that kind of consolidation? I kind of doubt it, right? However, what you hope for is that there are more and more people who have access who wouldn't have had it otherwise. There are more people who can have a video camera and work in a video tape store and watch every damn video and then become like a very respected Hollywood director. I mean, that's a real story, and it's totally related to technology and contemporary life. And so there's a lot that we want to grow out of this, and it's going to express the other side of the problem that I had alluded to earlier in terms of the process of having to kind of reinvent things or relearn. And so what you were talking about earlier, it's like it becomes easier and easier to do things, but they're crappier and crappier. So in some ways, people get used to less and less quality, even though, like you can look at like tons of movies and television that it's like are going to be way higher quality than anything that's being produced on YouTube. However, something comes up that has to do with the form and the society and the social aspect to that, which does start to generate new stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's where, I mean, I derive a lot of energy from that. I know that things are going to, I mean, I think, right, because in the NFT world, is it possible for there to be an infinite number of projects? I mean, we're going to be the blue pixel project. It's like 16 by 16 pixels.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and
I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it.
Oh no,
I'm just saying
you're fine. I mean, honestly, I come from the art perspective. I had two choices. I was like, okay, I can go jump in and try to like make a name in NFTs while I'm mid switching out of photography. That sounds horrible. And I think I was probably too late on that. So I figured, well, I'm always looking for community, and not community in the sense of like the buzzword community, more in the sense of like, oh, it's super awesome to just get in a group where 2 or 3 or 4 people are above average creative. Like my bar for like what I'm stoked about is usually pretty low. Like it doesn't take a lot to get me excited. But part of that is because like I live in the woods. So if there's a conversation that goes further than like the weather, it's awesome.
Well, I think that's a really important point. I mean, frankly, I think that one of the things we've seen in the Discord, in Frogland, is it's very interesting to watch people kind of. It's kind of like, looking at a schoolyard, right, and seeing which kids start to kind of form a bond, right. We're all kids deep down. Well, no one will ever forget it, but there's an aspect of play here and interaction. It's like, oh, sure, you're interested in that. Oh, cool. Yeah. And then you start talking, and then you start judging people in a very different realm, right? Like you as an artist, right? I mean, yeah, creativity matters. Obviously, you talk to another sculptor or photographer or filmmaker or whatever.
When I say creativity, I talk about it like in the
You don't
broader term.
mean that. That's what I'm
I
saying.
don't, yeah. I'm like, I really don't have that many photographer friends or like
Right.
people that I would consider like creative professionals. It's not a like, it's not by choice. It's just like I find the internet culture of photography a little bit toxic. And locally, like my best friend photographer lives like 5 hours away from me. So he might as well, in most cases, be in like a different state. I see him like twice a year, maybe. But yeah, it's definitely one of those, like it's hard to find people to collaborate with here for sure. That's something that I was looking forward to, or was wanting, was
Yeah.
more opportunities to learn how to work with people even.
Yeah, and that is something that's very important, like with this project. When we talk about this, I mean, we want this to be uh like an outlet for creatives to like show their works, gain from their works, both, gain notoriety and to, make a living, ideally, right? And or at least partially, and to figure out like those new pathways. But I think part of what you were referring to too is that it's not just about creativity in terms of the execution of a very specific medium or art form. It's also creativity in terms of people's personalities and imaginative qualities. Because I think one of the things that stands out, you've experienced this, I've experienced it. I have a feeling you and I have talked about it at one point or another. There's just so many interesting people, you
Hmm.
know, and when you talk to them, I mean, on this Discord in this project, people who are, dedicated to it or just there, and you start talking to them, and they're interesting people, man. They have lives, they have stories to tell, and even if they're not going to be a storyteller, they're enriching us with their stories, with
Oh
their
yeah.
ideas, and with their personalities. And they can be, I certainly have found myself saying, thinking more than once, it's like, I want this to work for a lot of personal reasons. You can call them selfish. But I also want it to work because I want this person to be happy.
Hmm.
And, I have a very kind of, very cliched kind of, entertainment obsessed um goal, which is I want to hear the sweetest sound I've ever heard, which is the sound of a bunch of people just cracking up, just really enjoying themselves, that kind of thing. Now, that means like, to use the Krusty the Clown quote from like whatever season it was of The Simpsons, it's like, with the Little Miss Simpson contest. It's just like the ad for it. It's like, do you have a void inside yourself so big it can only be filled by applause? Um, it's no joke. I mean, I think that's where a lot of us are, but I think that that's okay. I mean, it is what it is, and so that means that you want to make your audience happy.
Hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of that drives us. Drives me anyway.
It so I realized that was where the disconnect with my photography was. So
Mm,
I was shooting photos that I knew would make other people happy. And this was a like I came to this conclusion recently and it kind of blew my mind. But it was because I wanted them to, like, it was that side of not separating, oh, okay, if they like my work, they like me. Does that make sense? And so like the
oh, it
Discord
totally
has
makes
been
sense.
nice because there's more people in here that'll generally like put up with me than I've ever had in my life, which has been awesome. I'm like, thank God I found my wife, and she like we talk nonstop. So it's fascinating to me that it ended up being like an introverted person that I gelled with so well. But yeah, when I think about it, like a lot of my friends that are like good friends now are introverted, but we have really long, in-depth conversations. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think for a long time I was hoping that like that side of like, oh, if I do something big enough, it'll make other people believe in the next project or whatever, or like me. And if they like me, they'll be more likely to believe in the next project. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of growing up that happens even in that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you use the phrase "put up with me." I mean, when you talked about that, and the more and more people put up with me. I mean, it's interesting because it's really, I think it's true. I think that it's a real truth because introverted people, and maybe one of the things that defines this space that we need to be a little bit more mindful of is that we are talking about maybe a majority of people who have introversion, but that doesn't mean you don't want to connect.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you need to do it on your own terms and in a comfort zone. And for whatever reason, this technology enables that, whether it's because we can be in our own rooms, in our own clothes, or, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is, that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you don't want to love and be loved, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, when it comes to the work the thing that people who do quote art, or any kind of challenging invention, and again, I'm including engineering here too.
Oh yeah.
It all has to do with invention. Um, why do people do that? It's kind of insane. It's almost stupid. Because there's there's easier, quicker, better ways. Um, but it does become this very interesting balance of like, am I doing this? Like you said, is it something because you do want applause, like I was saying too, right? You know, uh, I hit this moment where I realized that it wasn't about people applauding me. I don't ever want to appear, I don't want to give me an award, don't make me go up on stage. Um, so it's like it becomes this very interesting kind of, I think, metaphysical split that you experience in the situation that we're talking about, which is that you think it's about yourself, but it isn't. What it's really about is your work. It's like I can be fucking annoying, and I know it. I mean, obnoxious, annoying, insistent, pissy, all that shit. Um, and I don't care if people don't like me, but I really want them to like my work, right? I
Yeah.
really, that matters more to me, except for my immediate family, of course. I want to be the person they need me to be. But that's a different thing. And so when it comes to the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The work matters a lot.
Yeah. And yeah. So you said the deal about getting the award but not having to go up on stage.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so when I was saying I want to be number two on stage, I don't want to be the person.
Right.
It's 100% that, and it's the weirdest thing because it's like if you're not getting recognized, there's a part of you that feels like that's what's going to fix it. But I think
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I think it just is like I know that I want to make the world a better place and I want to be able to pursue and build the things that I want to build and bring into the world. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like I want people to like the work and I want to like so coming from the marketing side, there's the like you should be targeted because if you find your people, you're going to be more comfortable, but it's so hard to do that in life. So like you were saying, we're finding more people. Like I wouldn't find you annoying or obnoxious or pissy. I would just kind of chuckle because that's going to be like that's your personality. That's who I know you to be. And there's like this weird comfort being in the Discord here, and I really hadn't found it till I met my wife. But I used to just like I didn't realize how much I overthought everything. Like one-on-one interactions with people, just so much stuff when I was younger. And then I like met my wife, and was all of a sudden it was like there's there's like a peace or a quietness here because like I can have a conversation with her. We're really, it's not like oh, you have to be on worried about what you say in front of the other person. We're pretty much just, like we're good with each other. And so we can like learn and like if I gotta wrap my head around an idea, like she'll talk with me enough that I can get through it, come to a conclusion, and like have that moment to like change my mind without holding me to what my original thought was. Just having people that can let you grow around you is a really cool experience. Not one that
Yeah.
I got in like the economic development groups or business groups that I was in the past.
Uh, yeah, I know it's true. It's very interesting. I mean, and I think one of the things that we don't fully understand, just because it's too early, man. I mean, this is somebody. I mean, eventually there'll be a documentary about this whole era.
Mm-hmm.
whatever happens to it. And it has a lot of earmarks of showing some very interesting transitions for people when it comes to um, well, I think a lot about literature, obviously. I mean, I write a lot. So, and I've read a lot and I've watched a lot and I think about all that stuff. And the one of the touch points for literature that actually crosses over generationally quite a bit is Kurt Vonnegut, Lonesome No More. And that one of the ideas that really appealed to me in this book was that the solution to people always being part of a group, and we can get into the whole group versus clan versus tribe issue in a second if you want, but
Sure.
is that whenever a child is born, they're assigned one of 13 like subnames, like middle names. And so everybody who had that middle name in the world or in the country, whatever domain you want to talk about, was a relative by definition. So if your middle name was Daffodil, anybody in town, it's like you found yourself stuck in town and you found somebody with the name Daffodil,
You had
then
a connection at least.
your family. Now, I mean, it's a risky idea, right? And people in this very strange world we live in now, like where so much paranoia and distrust, and not necessarily for bad reasons, but that idea of like, well, you're a frog, okay, so you can you can go into Frogland Discord, and you're very likely to find like somebody who's simpatico,
Yes. Yes.
somebody who will listen, somebody who wants to talk, somebody who speaks your language, and that's part of what this is. And so the worst thing that could happen is that this part of what this is isn't a permanent fixture of what this is.
Yeah.
It's a temporary phenomenon that is because it's not encoded, right? Well, okay, so I guess that's one of those things, right, that we can talk about is like, is that inevitable? Is that just a feature of human nature? Like, why is that going to be different than it was when it, back in, prehistory or like, 1200 AD?
Well, so here's the thing. I've never understood it because I have a really hard time with sports, but it's not the concept of sports or like the activity. It's and I had it younger too. Like I couldn't wear brands that I didn't feel like I was doing the thing that brand was known for. So like for me, like I shot extreme sports athletes. I had like people flipping like dirt bikes over my head. I would really, really have a hard time wearing a Fox Racing shirt, even though I'm like around that world as close to it because I haven't dirt biked. I enjoyed dirt biking, but I haven't participated in that enough to feel like I'm a hardcore part of that community to be able to like have branding. So that's a personal thing.
No, I think that's it. Actually, I think that's a very relevant and interesting thing. I've come across that a lot too, because I mean, one of the funny, ways that back in the earlier internet days, right? There was this whole joke. It's like on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? And so it was one of the first times in history that that people could en masse, and it unleashed it was Pandora's box,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what that unleashed at that moment, that people, I think some people were aware of it at the time, like a few writers for Wired magazine, who had already studied history and sociology. It's like, well, this could happen, right? And
Everybody's
so,
going to be 6'5".
well, I think the thing is that it's a bifurcation that's based on like a lot of human tendencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one is to connect, the other is to fuck other people's shit up, right? The whole troll
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, the destructive nature. I had roommates in college. They'd get drunk and they'd like steal stuff out of families' yards or just break stuff, and I never understood it.
Right. So that whole vandalism thing seems relatively mild in comparison to the consequences of people abusing others in a personal way, or
Yeah.
to taunt, or to, I mean, we see it all the time. I mean, it's part of what makes life interesting and right, because yeah, on the one hand it's like Frogland, right? All comers, we love everybody. Well, guess what? If you come in here and fuck people's shit up, we don't love you. So that's an honest statement. That's just, I mean, it
Everybody's
boils down to,
welcome. Just don't be a dick.
there you go. That's the primary rule. Don't be a dick. You might as well just put it right up on Web3, and say that this is our manifesto. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, at that level, but certainly, in this realm, it's a requirement. The question is, well, what about other? I mean, how to how to be? I mean, it boils down to some very difficult things that I think about. I mean, complicated. From a creative and sociological standpoint, right? I mean, we all want to make great entertainment. We want to be interesting and make interesting, cool looking stuff. It takes time. And guess what? It takes time, right? That whole,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people are getting used to that. But the cool thing about this generation of people, I think, is that everybody knows it's like nothing is easy, right? I mean, it takes a lot of man hours, person hours to create any, just watch the credits for the smallest thing, right? Even a commercial shoot, right? It's ridiculous
Mm-hmm.
just how much effort it takes. And so people, I think, are more and more patient about that in a lot of ways. um However, it's also true that we don't really understand what it is that's going to retain people, because there's the three pillars, right? Is it social? Is it the opportunity for some weird new experience that's gamified, or is it just tokenomics, meaning money? I mean, that there's a lot of cynicism that third thing is really the only thing that matters to anybody. Well, I would say that it matters to everybody, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the project has to be designed purely to maximize that. Um,
Yeah. And
that's a difficult thing to talk about, honestly.
well, and the thing too is like I've jumped into a couple play to earn style games and they're pretty boring. Like you're just grinding, you're doing essentially bot activities. Somebody might as well just invent one where you're grinding. That's what we need to do, Bugs. Okay. So we do a pay to earn platform where people just go do the bot engagement. And
Right.
instead of bots just doing it, we at least have people doing it. We call it a video game.
Right, which sounds like one of those like click farms. Right. It sounds like a Black Mirror episode. Right. I think that's where you're heading with this. And so that is a big issue, right? Because and that's why I think one of the things that I personally appreciate about this project, and that it took on someone like me to begin with, it's like they need, we need somebody to kind of make shit up,
Yeah.
make it, or at least to help channel and organize and figure out the strangeness, because strangeness is something that I am unabashedly devoted to. I love strangeness. I've said it from the beginning that one of the reasons why film noir has been such an inspiration for this project, from my point of view, from a creative point of view, is that it's I mean, the crime stuff, yeah, sure. The look of it, yeah, absolutely. The dramatics of it, the hard-boiled edge to it, all of that stuff, but it's the surrealism that really is the strongest thing. And I'm always most fearful that that's the thing that's going to get lost, is that surrealism. This idea of that, I always feel like I have to, or I want to make it clear, always want to make it clear what that means. Because surrealism is not fantasy as in like made up stuff. Surrealism is reality that you just don't directly experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole point of the surrealist movement in art is to start showing people, because our brains need to make sure we're not by bears,